Oh, I'm sorry, I just realized I was muted. Okay, so anyway, starting again. It's just great to have so many of you online. I just wish I could be in India in real life, but this will have to do. Anyway, the past few months have been unprecedented for all of us, from being in complete lockdown and working from home to facing some truly challenging times. We've all been through these months in our own unique ways. Working from home all the time myself, I've got to know our cats pretty well, and between us we've done a lot of jigsaws. Anyway, but thanks to technology, we're still able to come together as a community and do our work. And thanks to our Google Developer Group partners, I'm just so happy to be here today with all of you to present some of the latest updates to the web that we shared at our global event, Web.dev Live. Now, when coronavirus first became global, we felt the need to stabilize, and this resulted in us pausing Chrome releases and temporarily rolling back the same site cookie changes. We wanted to give developers the time to focus their energy on keeping their sites healthy. And to help with that, we built web.dev/COVID-19, dedicated to best practices that we felt developers could follow in times of traffic surge and network issues, as well as the many other challenges in moving to an online-only model really quickly. So there's actually a lot of great advice on that page for any site at any time. I really recommend taking a look. That's web.dev/COVID-19. And it was really heartening to see the entire community stepping up to help, from providing critical information to users about the pandemic in the United States, to stepping up right across the world. It's really great to see these developers and many others focusing on accessibility, resilience, and performance in these times. Now, to help with this, we've made some announcements over the past few months that we'd like to share with you. So let's begin with Web Vitals. This is an initiative by Google to help business owners, marketers, and developers identify opportunities to improve user experiences. The initiative is designed to simplify performance measurement and help you focus on the metrics that matter most, the core Web Vitals. Now, we believe that core Web Vitals are relevant to all web pages and every kind of site. Core Web Vitals represent the best available signals developers have today to measure the quality of experience on the web. However, we do appreciate that these signals are not perfect and the web is always changing, so future improvements or additions are likely. So the current set of 2020 metrics focuses on three aspects of the user experience: loading, interactivity, and visual stability. Now, the loading pillar relates to the interruptions the user may experience while navigating between pages. Loading metrics correlate to interruptions due to waiting that are obstacles to a good experience. Whereas the interactivity pillar focuses on distractions and errors from low responsiveness. This is critical because delaying something that the user expects to be instantaneous often leads to problematic interactions. For example, we know from research that many users click buttons multiple times, if they don't get immediate feedback. And that's a huge problem, for an add to cart button or whatever. And finally, the visual stability pillar focuses on the stability of components while the page loads and renders and becomes interactive. Now, we found that page components moving around during page load was a major problem for many users. So for 2020, there are three metrics that correspond to the three pillars of Core Web Vitals. These are LCP, FID, and real users, so they reflect real-world user experience, and not just from your computer on your desk in your office. For Paint, or LCP, measures loading performance. Now, for a good user experience, LCP should occur within 2.5 seconds of when the page first starts loading. First input delay, or FID, measures interactivity and should be less than 100 milliseconds. Cumulative layout shift, or CLS, is a measure calculated for visual stability, and it should be less than 0.1. Now, we suggest measuring these metrics on the 75th percentile to make sure you're achieving these targets for most of your users across mobile and desktop devices. In other words, at least 75% of your page views should get a good score for each metric. So let's go into a bit more detail on all these metrics. Largest contentful paint, or LCP, measures when a page-to-page navigation appears complete to a user. Now, previously, we used first contentful paint and other indicators, but in testing, we found that LCP is the most impactful to users. Now, as the name suggests, LCP reports the render time of the largest content element visible within the viewport. It considers images, videos, elements, and so on, text, and bear in mind that a single page may have multiple LCP targets, but the last one occurring should be considered the LCP score indicator, or as we call it, the related node. Now, first input delay measures the time interval between when a user first interacts with a page, for example, clicking on a link, and the time when the browser is actually able to respond to that interaction. In general, an input delay happens because the browser's main thread is busy doing something else. Another common reason is that the browser is busy parsing and executing large JavaScript files in your app. Now, you can even find an example on the chart here that explains how downloading large JavaScript files may delay the user input response because of long JavaScript tasks. Long first input delay typically occurs between the first contentful paint and time to interactive. Now, the cumulative layout shift metric measures the sum total of the individual layout shift scores for every unexpected layout shift that occurs during the entire lifespan of the page. A layout shift occurs anytime a visible element changes its start position in the viewport between two frames. The layout shift score is a product of two measures of that movement, the impact fraction and the distance fraction. Impact fraction measures how unstable elements impact the viewport area between two frames. Distance fraction measures the distance that unstable elements have moved relative to the viewport. You can learn more about the JavaScript APIs behind each of the core web vitals and what kinds of studies we put in place in order to define the threshold. Okay, so you may be wondering, well, what's the impact of all this? Well, we did research on millions of page impressions. We found that if a site meets the Web Vitals thresholds, users are 24% less likely to abandon the page before the first content is painted. Just to repeat, following the Web Vitals guidelines can lead to a 24% reduction in page abandonment, which is pretty amazing. So the same metrics are also planned to be included in the new page experience search ranking, among other signals, in order to provide a holistic picture of the quality of the user's experience on a web page. Now, timing is still in discussion, so there's no immediate action required. We're planning to provide at least 6 months notice before the changes roll out. You can find out more about this on the Webmaster Central blog. So, what's next for tooling? Well, all Google's popular tools for web developers now support Web Vitals. And as mentioned, I think before, we've also added a Chrome extension to allow anyone to track core Web Vitals from any web page. And finally, we've launched a JavaScript library for you to be able to integrate the Web Vitals in your development processes quickly and easily. Web Vitals is it's like 1K modular library that makes it really simple to record and report Web Vitals metrics. Here's a slightly longer example that shows you how to use Web Vitals to record metrics and report them back to your analytics backend. So what should you do first? Well, 2 things. Step 1, go to PageSpeed Insights if you haven't been there already, and this will give you your Web Vitals metrics for your site, both in the field and in the lab. From the Crux data set, you'll be able to see whether or not 75% of your loads are hitting the core Web Vitals thresholds for each metric in the field, for both your page and your origin. And then you can take a look at your lab data from Lighthouse to see whether or not you're hitting the core Web Vitals thresholds for each metric in a synthetic testing environment. And this helps you to guide, well, helps to guide you towards actionable opportunities to improve your page's performance. Step 2, check out the talks that we've shared for Web.dev Live. You know, these can help you learn much more depth about tools and techniques to measure and optimize against core Web Vitals. So speaking of tooling, I'm really excited to be able to tell you about a new initiative, which is called Tooling Report. My colleagues at Google Chrome Labs, like they're the people who built apps like Squoosh and Prox, you know, as well as Chrome Dev Summit websites. You know, as with any web development team, you know, they started generally by discussing project infrastructure like hosting environment, frameworks, the build tool setup. Now, all this evolves, of course, as the project progresses. New plugins are added in order to accommodate new frameworks or techniques. All the way we write code, you know, has changed so that build tools better understand what we're trying to achieve. And throughout this project, in the process of this, the Google Chrome Labs team often have been finding that the tools they select end up getting in their way. And this experience led them to investigate what different build tools can and cannot do. Now, Tooling Report gives you an overview of the features supported across a selection of web build tools. They can help you choose the right build tool for your next project, decide if migrating from one tool to another is worth it, or work out how best to adopt a tool's best practice into your existing configuration and code base. Tools, you know, have different focus areas and don't cater to all needs equally well. There's always, of course, like a question of trade-offs. So with Tooling Report, we aim to show the trade-offs at play and to document how to follow best practices with any given build tool. So how can you evaluate and compare different build tools in one place? Well, the team approached this by writing test cases. For each tool, they wrote a build script to check if the tool can fulfill the test's success criteria. As an initial step, they decided to investigate Webpack v4, Rollup 2, and Parcel 2. They also tested Browserify and Gulp, since a large number of projects still use this setup. Now, for a test to pass, only publicly documented features of the tool or a plugin for the tool can be used. I mean, of course, we worked, you know, with the authors of the build tools to make sure that we use their tools correctly and you know, representing them fairly. So the tool specifically focuses on how to deliver fast, responsive, and smooth user experiences, intentionally excluding tests for developer experience, you know, in order to avoid measuring like different priorities and outcomes. So the tests are grouped into categories to give you a quick sense of which tool is excelling in which category. And you can also inspect each test individually, which is where Tooling Report gets really interesting, actually. The dedicated test page shows how the build tools are scoring on a specific test. And then this also contains a long form description as to why the test is important, how the test was codified, and what the expected outcome is. Clicking the GitHub logo takes you to the minimal test project that has been created to determine the tool's score. Now, this way, Tooling Report not only tells you which best practices a tool can and cannot follow, but also functions as a source of documentation. Speaking of tooling, the Chrome DevTools, I'd really like to take you through just some of the fantastic updates we've had in Chrome DevTools recently. Firstly, you know, do you get really fed up with console spam, like these browser messages that tell you all these problems, but you know, not how to fix them? I mean, personally, this drives me nuts. Well, the Issues tab is here to help. The Issues tab is a new way for Chrome DevTools to help you find and fix problems with your website. Now, if Chrome DevTools detects any issues on your page, you'll see a warning that takes you to the Issues tab. By the way, you'll notice that for the moment, warnings that used to show up in the console still do, as well as in the Issues tab. Now, once you're in the Issues tab, you might need to click the Reload Page button, since DevTools can't collect requests while it's closed. And you'll see that the Issues tab groups issues by type. You can also see from this screenshot that issues reported in the console, such as the cookie warnings here, are really quite hard to understand. You know, it's not clear from the console what needs to be done to fix the issues, whereas the Issues tab provides a much more structured and pragmatic approach. So you click on an item in the Issues tab to find out what's causing a problem and how to fix it. Each item has 4 components: a headline describing the issue, a description providing context and the solution, then an affected resources section that links to resources within the appropriate DevTools context, such as the network panel. And then you have links to further guidance as well. You click on a resource link to view the item, like I say, within the appropriate context within DevTools. In this example, there's a problem with cookie CK02, and you know exactly how to fix it. And you can also go the other way. Right-click on an item within DevTools to show issues associated with it. Now, the initial version of the Issues tab checks for 3 types of issue: cookie problems, cross-origin embedder policy, that's co-op issues, and mixed content. Future versions will support more issue types. So let us know what you think, how we could improve the Issues tab and what features you'd like to see. File a bug report or send a tweet to Chrome DevTools. Now, we've, of course, also added Web Vitals support to DevTools. In the DevTools timeline, along with core Web Vitals metrics such as LCP, you can also see other related metrics that are meaningful and important to developers. Now, additionally, because core Web Vitals are all field metrics, we want to ensure that you can still measure and track them in lab data with tools such as Chrome DevTools. So for real user-based metrics such as FID, we've got TBT, total blocking time, as a lab equivalent that can be used to track and diagnose your real user performance of first input delay. Now, in this example, there's a page with long tasks that mean that they're taking more than 50 milliseconds for the browser to make the content interactive. So what we do here to show this is candy striping on the task, and like you can see a red triangle at the top right corner. The candy striping kicks in at 50 milliseconds, so everything on its right is basically the time spent over and above the threshold. So the total blocking time can be thought of as the amount of candy striping that you have in recording for your task. We've also integrated layout shift, which shows visual stability. Chrome DevTools gives details for page components with problems and highlights areas of the page that moved. And finally, if you want to get a live view of layout shifting, you can go to the rendering tab in Chrome DevTools and click on layout shift regions to check it. Now, we've also added WebAssembly debugging to Chrome DevTools, but do be aware that this is still experimental. It's still amazing though. If you're writing your code in C or Rust, you want to debug your code just like you do with standard JavaScript. That's something we now support. So you can now include a breakpoint in your C code that you've compiled to WebAssembly. And you can also see the callback stack there that allows you to see the calls that are going from the JavaScript into the C and so on. I mean, to me, this is just fantastic, amazing, beautiful engineering. I also had incorporated something, we looked at color vision deficiency emulation that helps developers see how a page's colors and contrast changes with various vision deficiencies. Now, vision deficiencies aren't an on-off thing. They're a spectrum where people experience everything from a mild deficiency to something very acute. So we've implemented the most acute form of each deficiency listed. The theory being that if you optimize for the most acute case, everything up to that will also be included. Okay, so I've covered the Chrome DevTools, but what about Lighthouse? Well, as you may know, Lighthouse just announced version 6, which has new metrics, including Web Vitals, new audits, and a new performance score. So let's start with the updates to the perf score. Now, on a high level, we want to make sure that you can get a sense of your loading performance, interactivity, and layout predictability. The metrics and the weights of those metrics that formulate the top-level score are intended to give you a balanced view of your user experience quality against critical dimensions. Now, there's also this really nifty scoring calculator to help you explore the performance scoring. The calculator also gives you a comparison between version v5 and v6 scores. Now, when you run an audit with Lighthouse 6.0, the report comes with a link to the calculator with your results populated. Lighthouse v6 also offers quite a few new audits with a focus on JavaScript analysis and accessibility. All of the products that Lighthouse powers are updated to reflect the latest version, including Lighthouse CI, which enables you to easily measure your core Web Vitals on pull requests before they're merged and deployed. which is pretty amazing. Page Speed Insights, that's PSI, reports on the lab and field performance of a page on both mobile and desktop devices. The tool provides an overview, as you know, of how real-world users experience the page, powered by the Chrome UX report, and a set of actionable recommendations on how a site owner can improve page experience, which is provided by Lighthouse. Now, Page Speed Insights and the Page Speed Insights API have also been upgraded to use Lighthouse 6.0 under the hood and now support measuring core web vitals, both the lab and field sections of the report. Core web vitals are annotated with a blue ribbon that you can see here. Now, from the Crux dataset, you'll also be able to see whether or not 75% of your loads are hitting the core web vitals thresholds for each metric in the field for both your page and your origin. And then you can take a look at your lab data from Lighthouse to see whether or not you're hitting the core web vitals threshold for each metric in a synthetic testing environment. And this helps you to guide you, towards actionable opportunities to improve your page's performance. So the new Core Web Vitals report in Search Console helps you identify groups of pages across your site that require attention based on real-world field data from Crux. URL performance grouped by status, metric type, and URL group, that's groups of similar web pages. And the report is based on the 3 core Web Vitals metrics, LCP, FID, and CLS. And it's a great way to identify pages that need your attention on your site. The Chrome UX report is a public data set of real user experience on millions of websites. It measures field versions of all the core Web Vitals. So, even if you don't have run real user measurement on your site, Crux can provide a quick and easy way to assess your core Web Vitals. The newly redesigned Crux dashboard allows you to easily track an origin's performance over time, and now you can use it to monitor the distributions of all the core Web Vitals metrics. So to get started with the dashboard, check out our tutorial on web.dev. We've introduced a new core Web Vitals landing page to make it even easier to see how your site is performing at a glance. There's also a new Crux API for you to use, built from the ground up to provide developers with simple, fast, and comprehensive access to field-based user experience data. You can query for an origin or a URL and segment results by different form factors. The API updates daily and summarizes the previous 28 days worth of data, including your core Web Vitals performance. So we're really excited, to integrate more features over time to enable new ways to explore the data and discover insights about the state of user experiences. So web.dev is really your go-to place for guidance on web development. It now also supports the canonical page for information about Web Vitals. The web.dev measure tool allows you to measure the performance of your page over time, providing a prioritized list of guides and code labs on how to improve. Its measurement is powered by Page Speed Insights, which has Lighthouse 6.0 under the hood, as I've said, and fully supports the core Web Vitals metrics, as you can see here. There are a slew of other amazing tools to help support you with measuring, optimizing, and monitoring your core Web Vitals. Google's official WordPress plugin SiteKit also now has Web Vitals support. With SiteKit, you get insights about how people find and use your site, how to improve and monetize your content directly in your WordPress dashboard, and how you're performing against core Web Vitals. As I mentioned before, we're seeing so many great ecosystem players and production monitoring solutions already implementing support for core Web Vitals. We're really delighted with this. So, thanks everyone for this really awesome work. Speaking of WordPress and Web Vitals, I'd just like to finish by telling you about, it's a really brilliant initiative. Again, like fantastic engineering from colleagues across the AMP team and other teams. This is called Web Stories. So this is a new, immersive, fast-loading, full-screen experience for the web. And yes, we're talking about these kinds of stories, like full-screen, portrait. But these, are not your sort of standard, walled garden stories. The biggest advantage we have with the current implementations is their ephemerality and yeah, this ultra low barrier to creation. But the stories format can also work beyond the ephemeral use case and can become its own pillar in the open web media landscape. And that's because they're really cheaper to make than video and more engaging than a plain ordinary text article. And really important, web stories are different to walled off stories in many important ways. Just like a regular web page, you own them, you host them, and very important, you get the money from the ads, not the platform serving the stories. Now, because stories are really a visual format, both Google Search and the Discover teams are showcasing them in these really cool ways, with indications that many more integrations are coming later this year. We think this can be a great net new traffic source for web creators. But you might ask, like, what's the easiest way to start creating? Well, good question. If we want the web to be able to compete with the closed platforms out there, story creation needs to be as intuitive and fast for all content creators. Now, lots of people are working on making web stories a thing, but one of the things that's most exciting here is that story creation is coming to WordPress, the most used CMS in the world. And this is in the form of a visual editor coming to you very soon. If you register at the link you see here, you'll be able to be notified as soon as the beta is out. And you'll hopefully see all the basic editing features you would expect, like smooth image and video handling, text controls, shape masking, and all that stuff. And the Google team is also working on some stuff you might not expect, like this one we call Text Magic, running in real time against images from the Unsplash API here. Toggled on, this feature makes it so that the editor always ensures text is readable, making dynamic decisions about the background, the line height, and so on. So stay tuned and read more on amp.dev/about/stories. So thank you very much for having me. And just a reminder, all the sessions that I've mentioned from web.dev live are now available online. So I really hope to actually see you in India very soon. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.